Hi, I'm Becky Meagher, and welcome to Transitions, Body, Mind, Spirit. Transitions. We all have so many different transitions in our life. I like to use the metaphor of triathlons, something that I've been doing for 13 years. And in a triathlon, first you swim, and then you get in a transition area, and then you bike, and then you get in a transition area, and then you run. And what a great metaphor that is for our life and from being from one thing to another. And today we have a fascinating person who owns Southern Brookies, Susan Thrasher. And she has been everything from a civil engineer for 26 years to doing her dream. And her dream is owning a fly fishing school, place, house, teaching people. It's just a wonderful thing. So, Susan, thank you for being here.
Well, thanks for having me.
So, give us a sentence or two on what you currently are doing, what your company is, and then we'll kind of go back to how this all began.
Well, Southern Brookies is my business. I started in 2004, and I started it out just as a part-time adventure because I was still working at the time. But I got into fly fishing and just absolutely fell in love with it. And I was so passionate about it, I wanted to share that with other people. So I decided to start a school where I could teach people how to cast and then how to catch a fish and take them out on the water and guide them.
That is so cool. That is so cool. So you have a beautiful house that you dreamt about and built on the Caney Fork. Tell us about that.
Well, I live in East Nashville, but I found a spot along the Caney Fork River. Just by chance, I was floating down on a kayaking trip, and I looked over and I saw a big auction sign in a field. Wow. And I'd always wanted a place on the river, but I called the realtor about it, and they said, well, the auction's going to be over Memorial Day weekend. And I already had a trip planned up to the Smoky Mountains, and I decided I'm going to cancel that trip and go to that auction. And I showed up, and there were quite a few people there. And I went up to the auctioneer and just started talking to them about, how it worked. I was worried I would throw up my paddle to bid and, it would be like this exorbitant cost. But anyway, I got all my fears kind of and questions answered. But anyway, I ended up buying the property and being there for about a year, trying out, different locations of where the building would be placed. Put the building in, and then actually put in a little spot where I had the school, but living quarters upstairs. So it's just a little cabin and a casting pond, and put in a ramp, and then I've just started adding on from there. But it is officially a school.
Wow, that is wonderful. I love it that you just saw the opportunity and you just canceled the plans and went for it. And just, it was raw land, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Raw land, and you looked at it and somehow went, this is going to be the house.
Yes.
Yes, I love that. That's great. So tell us a little bit about how you even got to the place that you're at now with your school, Southern Brookies, because you were raised in Tri-Cities, right, in Tennessee?
Mm-hmm, Tri-Cities area.
Okay.
I'm definitely Southern. I was born in Mobile, Alabama, and when I was 2, my family, we moved to Bristol. We were on the Tennessee side up until I was in about the 4th grade, and then we moved to the Virginia side, Bristol, Virginia. So I graduated from high school there, went on to school at UT Martin. I was into sports, and so I played volleyball on a scholarship at UT Martin.
Got a scholarship in volleyball.
I did,
wow.
And played a little tennis. I was on the tennis team. And then at the time, UT Martin only gave, they had a 2-year engineering program, and then to finish your degree, you had to move on to UT Knoxville. Well, I wanted to stay and finish playing throughout my volleyball time that I had there, so I just extended the engineering 2-year program, played volleyball, and then moved on to UT Knoxville and finished my civil engineering degree there.
Wow, so you were a civil engineer, and you probably were a minority. Were there very many female civil engineers in class?
In most of the classes at that time, I was the only female in the class.
Yeah.
Yeah, once I moved on to UT Knoxville, there were maybe 2 or 3, women at that time, but that was a ways back. So things have changed now. It's probably a little bit more even. But at the time, especially at Martin, I was the only female in most of the classes.
Wow, wow. So there you were, you liked science and math, you told me, and you got your degree, and then you started working as a civil engineer, and you were in various different places too, right?
I jumped around quite a bit in different places, not with companies, but I started out with a small company in Memphis, and from Memphis moved with that same company to Arizona. But I can remember as a little girl standing on the Golden Gate Bridge with my dad. I was probably 7 or 8 years old, and I remember holding his hand, looking out over the city, and I said, I'm going to live here one day.
Wow.
Well, when I was living in Arizona, a company called me, a headhunter actually, and said, would you be interested in San Francisco because there's a position opening up? And I said, I would. So I moved, like within the next 3 weeks, moved to San Francisco and lived out there for 6 years. And then with that same company, Parsons Brinkerhoff, it's called WSP now, I moved around to several different cities for different promotions. So I moved from San Francisco to Atlanta, and then to the Norfolk, Virginia Beach area, and then finally to Nashville.
Wow. And in your history as a kid, I love it that you predicted you'd live in San Francisco, and you did. But what about your fishing history as a child? And I think you were embedded with your dad and relatives. Tell us about that.
Well, as long as I can remember, I was fishing. I mean, just even some of my earliest memories, I had a fishing rod. Not fly fishing, but just traditional, conventional, tackle, worm dunking, as we call it.
Worm dunking?
But I started out fishing in some ponds and some lakes, and then, of course, my grandparents, one set, they were in Mobile, Alabama, so we would go to Dauphin Island and Fairhope and fish in saltwater. And I did that quite a bit with my dad. Have some really good memories of that.
Wow. And then you had an aha moment, I believe, that got you into fly fishing and started another path. And your dad's a retired pastor, right?
That's right. I was living in Norfolk at the time, and he called and said, one of the fellows from the church wants to take us fly fishing. Would you be interested in doing that? And I said, yeah, I don't know anything about it, but yes, that sounds fun. So I went home the next weekend. I'd borrowed a pair of waders from one of my coworkers, and we went over to Robert Shiver's house. That was the fellow that was going to teach us. He lived right across the street from the South Holston River, which is a really great trout river there in the Tri-Cities. So he gave us just a really quick lesson, of what to do. In fact, my dad still tells me that he felt so sorry for me because I was just back and forth with my rod, not doing it correctly, slapping the water behind me. But somehow I was able to catch fish that day, a trout on a fly.
Yes.
And I went home, and I can picture it just like it was yesterday. Walked in the kitchen, and my mother said, did you guys have a good time? And I said, it was so much fun. I am absolutely certain it changed my life today because I want to learn everything there is about fly fishing. And I fell in love with it. And I don't know, sometimes when I get into something, I'm just so completely obsessed with that thing. And this was fly fishing for me, which really changed a lot. I used to love to golf. I used to love to mountain bike. And it was like I took all the time that I had available to me, all I wanted to do was be in the water and fish or anything I could that was related to fly fishing. So that's what I did. That's what started the journey.
Wow, wow. And you were at what age at that time?
I was probably mid to late 30s,
Okay.
around that time.
Okay. So then that path of yours, okay, I really love this fly fishing, and bit by bit you got into it more and more. Tell us more about how that developed.
Over, I guess, after a couple of years, and again, you know, I've really focused on trying to hone in on my skills. And so I'd be out on the water and people would ask me, you know, different questions about the flies I was using and, you know, how I was casting. And I found that I was enjoying answering questions and talking to anglers as much as I was, you know, fishing on my own. And I thought, this is probably unusual because most people just want to fish.
Right, don't
And,
bother me, don't bother me.
But I was really enjoying helping people out and teaching. In fact, I have found that's a pattern. I remember I used to really enjoy mountain biking. And at one time I thought, maybe I'll be a backroads guide. And then I remember enjoying working out in the gym a lot. And I thought, maybe I'll be a personal trainer. Well, with fly fishing, that was the first thing that really stuck, that made me, you know, this is what I want to do and I'm going to do it. So I went down the path of, you know, going to some very reputable guide schools and casting schools, just so I could get that credibility under my belt. I also did a certification program so I could be a certified caster with what was the Federation of Fly Fishers at the time. And so I was certified there, so I felt like I was starting to get more and more credibility. I went through a school for guides called Real Women, that's out in Victor, Idaho. So I went through that school, and then I also went through the Joan Wolfe School of Casting that's in upstate New York in the Catskills.
It's a very famous school, isn't it?
Very well known. Joan Wolfe is probably, I would say, arguably the most well-known and famous of all women anglers, probably in the entire world. If you're into fly fishing at all, you know who Joan is, and she is in her early 90s now, very healthy, still fishing, and still comes down to the school and gives some casting lessons also.
Wow, yeah. That's inspirational right there.
Yes.
Wow, wow, that's fabulous. So there you are. But you're keeping your day job and you're going to these various schools, you're fishing, you're realizing that people are really listening to you, and in the back of your mind, it sounds like when you're thinking, maybe I want to have a school?
Yeah, oh, it was in the forefront of my mind most times.
Okay.
I really enjoyed my career as a civil engineer, and I moved more out of the technical side into the business side, and was, you know, met a lot of the corporate goals that I had in my mind of what I wanted to do. And in fact, was working more on the corporate level. I spent a lot of time at our headquarters in Manhattan. And it wasn't unusual for me to fly home on a Friday afternoon after working all week there in New York and have a guide trip booked for a Saturday and a Sunday, hop on the plane and go right back to New York. And it really turned out to be not just a side job, but it was such a passion that it was like a stress reliever for a stressful job. And so I would come in, do my thing, and where I wasn't thinking about work, I was really concentrating on the casting school or guiding, and it was just a real release. So I wasn't working, you know, 24/7 on the engineering side of things.
Right, right. And then when was the time then you go, okay, I'm going to quit the day job and do this full time? How did that happen? Because that's the big dream. Everybody says, yeah, I want to do it. And then they can't seem to do the next step to go, okay, I'm going to quit the day job, because it's scary.
Yes. Oh, yeah, I know. Well, in 2004 is when I started Southern Brookies, and that was just on a part-time basis. And, you know, I had a website, and, you know, I tried to get the word out. But, again, I was just doing it on the weekends. And little by little, I thought, you know, while I have a job, I'm going to go ahead and start investing in my equipment, you know, all the gear. I bought the property, built the school, and then as I was starting to get more and more into it, and the years were going along, I thought I need to have a plan in place, and, you know, put some money away in the bank, and then just find the right time with the job as well, because I wanted to finish out a project And I just kept waiting, and then it came one day when I was wrapping up a large project, and I was talking to a coworker, a friend of mine, Judy Craig, and I said, you know, I've just finished this project, and I think I'm getting close. And she said, what in the world is stopping you? And I thought, what is stopping me? I could do this.
Yes.
So I went on a hike with a friend, and in fact, she'll be on the show here in just one of your shows anyway, I'm sure. And was telling her, I think I'm really I can make this happen. And so anyway, we both agreed, yeah, what's stopping you? So I called my parents that night, and I said, are both of y'all on the phone? And they were. And I said, I have something I wanted to tell you. And my dad, before I could even say it, he said, you're quitting your job and you're going to just do fly fishing. And I said, how did you know that? And he said, well, I just figured it out. We've been wondering what you're waiting for. And so that was May of 2015. So I'm approaching my 5th year now, and I haven't looked back once. So.
Wow, wow. That there, for everyone listening and hearing this wonderful story, it's like, what are you waiting for? Go do it. Go do it. This is wonderful. Wow. Now, another part of all this, and you have the school, and I want to talk a little bit about the Music City Fly Girls, which is a club that you started, and we're going to have a second show which will feature some of the people that are in Music City Fly Girls. But tell us about how you began that, what the inspiration was, and what that is.
Well, a lot of times I would give, once or twice a year, I would give a casting lesson or a guide trip as a donation to another fly fishing club. And so I gave one of my guide trips to the Hendersonville fly fishers, which isn't in existence anymore, but one of the women that bid on it and got it, her name was Nikki Mitchell. And she and her friend Cindy Denham got the guided float trip. So I met them on the Caney Fork, and we were just starting out our float. And you know, you meet some people and you know that you just like them and you're going to be instant friends right away. And that's the way it was with Nikki and Cindy. And we were probably 15 or 20 minutes into our float when we started talking about fly fishing clubs and about the need for, we thought it would be a neat thing to have a women's fly fishing club, because it's a different dynamic. You know, you can have co-ed clubs, but having an all-women's anything is going to be a different dynamic, you know, than co-ed. So we thought, we started talking about it. I had some ideas, Nikki had some ideas, and that was in August, and we decided we were going to meet the next week for lunch, come up with a plan, and we ended up on October the 15th, 2007.
That's my birthday, by the way.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Well, 2007, we put the word out there, and we had 15 people to show up for our first meeting. Wow. And so we started talking through, okay, what are we going to do? What's it going to look like? What are we going to call ourselves? And one thing we all agreed on is that we were going to have a club of all women that would not have any drama. Because anytime you get a bunch of women together, it's usually going to happen. We can say that because we're women, and you know what I mean. But that's what we agreed, no drama in this club. We also wanted to have it to where one woman could pick up the phone and call somebody else find a fishing buddy. And then we wanted to travel, do some you know, out-of-state outings. But we also wanted to give back in some way to the community, whether it was a river cleanup or some kind of volunteer activity. We wanted to do that. And it just so happened I had been invited to participate in something called Casting for Recovery in East Tennessee. And so we went to, I went and said yes, I would do it. And as it turned out, it was such a great experience. I brought that back to the Fly Girls.
And Casting for Recovery is, tell us what that is. It's for women with breast cancer?
Yes, it's a nonprofit organization. They have multiple retreats in many states across the country. And it's an all expense paid weekend for breast cancer survivors. And at each retreat, 14 women are selected completely at random that have applied, you know, to come to the retreat. But we teach them to fly fish. But it's not just all about the fishing. It's about the camaraderie, about having that common thing that's going on in their lives with breast cancer. Some have just been diagnosed, some are survivors years out, but they have an opportunity to share, with each other. There's a psychosocial that leads the group, in talking and expressing and being able to share with the others the issues that they're all experiencing.
Right.
But then they learned the basics of fly fishing. They learn a little bit of fly tying. They have a medical a person that talks to them about some questions that they may have, in experiencing with their treatments. And then on the final day of the retreat, each of the women are paired with a professional guide and a river helper that takes them out and guides them on the river to catch fish.
And most of them had never had experience doing that, right?
Most of the times, yes. It's the first time they've ever held a fly rod. Yeah.
And we'll be interviewing some people who have done that on the other show, but it seems like it's been life-changing. And how many people now are in Music City Fly Girls?
Well, we started out with 15,
right.
And we are over 70 members now at this point. And we're 13 years in, or on our 13th year. This will be our 12th Casting for a Recovery retreat that we're doing in Middle Tennessee. At the time I did the East Tennessee retreat, Trout Unlimited was wanting to work to start a Middle Tennessee retreat. But it was mostly men that were doing it, and the retreat should be led by women. That's one of Casting for Recovery's stipulations. And so they were looking for, well, where are the women going to be that we can find to actually do this? Well, lo and behold, the Music City Fly Girls had just been established for a year, and we said, we'll do it. And so we stepped up, and then we basically just kind of got in there and took it on, and this will be our 12th retreat now that we've done.
That is fabulous.
Yeah.
Wow.
All funded by donations from the community. I mean, the Fly Girls, pile in the funds, but we always have a fundraiser called Pint Night at Cumberland Transit, a local outdoor store here. And they've been so great about helping us out with opening up the store in the evenings, and we have some auction items, and that's just been our great event and moneymaker. So that'll be coming up in April, actually, just right around the corner.
Right around the corner, wow. And the other really exciting thing, and by the way, to all the people out there, I am a member of the Music City Fly Fishing Group, and I haven't fished a whole lot, but there's a lot of social things to go to, and they like wine and have fun and are a delight in many, many ways. But the neat thing that is around the corner is you have a book. And
yes.
We're going to show the cover of the book because you just said it's not even out yet. But that is thrilling. Then we want to know about your book.
Well, writing a book was not anything that was ever in my plan. I've never enjoyed writing, never had any kind of desire to do it. And I was speaking at a fly fishing club in northern Kentucky, and a fella came up to me after the presentation and he said, "You should write a book." And I said, "Yeah, I'm not really interested in doing that." And he said, "No, really, I know a publisher, and he has a bookshop that has a little coffee shop, and they have the best maple donuts." And I said, and he goes, "And if you stick around for an extra day, I'll introduce you." And I said, "You know what? I don't want to write a book, but I'll come for the coffee and the donuts." So I did. I went the next morning, met with the publisher, and I still wasn't convinced it was something I wanted to do. But the publisher said, if his name was Ron Ellis, was the gentleman that wanted to introduce me to the publisher. And he said, "If Ron says you should write a book, I think you should write a book. And we need someone to do a book like this on fly fishing." So I said, "All right, I'll give it some thought." And it just seemed like the right thing to do. And I was on my drive back from Kentucky, I thought, what could I write on that would be different? And I thought, the Fly Girls. So I decided to do a guidebook that was kind of intertwined with all of the travels and the outings that the Fly Girls have been on. And we've been to Utah, to Colorado, to Montana, to New Mexico, to California. We just went to Canada this last year. We're getting ready to go to Wyoming. So there was a lot of material that I could work with just on the adventures that we had, and then how to go about teaching people through those stories how to fly fish. So it was amazing to me that sitting down and starting writing, I thought it was really going to be difficult.
Yeah.
But once I started to type it and was just starting to think about our trips and what I would want to tell someone and how to actually do it, it just kind of poured out of me. And so yeah, 30 some chapters later, it should be out and published. May the 12th is the publishing date.
Okay,
so.
May the 12th, 2020.
Just right around the corner.
Right,
Yeah.
around the corner. Wow. And of course, we're on the credits, we're going to tell about how they can get in touch with you. What is your website? And Music City also.
It's www.southernbrookies.com. Actually, it's the only Southern Brookies out there, so if you just Google Southern Brookies, it's going to take you to it. I also have a Facebook page and Instagram. And then same with the Fly Girls, it's just musiccityflygirls.com, and we have a Facebook page and a website.
Okay. And if somebody wants to just try it out, they can hire you at your beautiful place on the Caney and hire you for a day of fly fishing. They can get lessons there. It's like, don't be shy. Oh, I don't know anything. You are a wonderful teacher, having experienced it myself.
Well, thank you.
And then people can learn, and then and it's just so beautiful to be out there. And we haven't, our time is running out, but we haven't even talked about all the gloriousness of being outdoors and seeing the wonderful fish. And we have some pictures of you and these beautiful fish, and it is catch and release. The fish go on to have a nice life, and you get to enjoy their beauty and go and find other fish.
That's right. And the nice thing about the school is if you come out, you don't have a day, you can take an hour-long class, you can take a half day, you can take a full-day float trip, but all of the equipment that you need, all of that's included and is there and available.
So all the equipment, they don't even have to come with a rod and reel.
They don't have to come with anything except an attitude to want to learn. That's it.
Right, and it's a beautiful thing out there in the Caney Fork. All right, and gee whiz, and I've been out there, I have kayaked out there, it's wonderful, it's fantastic. So thank you so much for being on our show. Stay tuned for another show about this too. Thank you very much. Transitions, have a good time. Bye.